The enchanted harp. One day, on my way to the workshop, I noticed a rustling in the leaves of our garden. Curious, I wanted to investigate. Much to my disbelief, I saw with my own eyes a tiny unicorn and a fairy hiding underneath a rhubarb leaf. They were huddled together, trying not to be seen. At that point, I heard a commotion in the alley and noticed 3 or 4 very excited boys with nets and gunny sacks looking around every corner and behind every fence as if they were trying to catch something. I looked back at the little creatures under the rhubarb leaf and realized what they were hiding from. I decided to protect them from the menacing posse fast approaching. Once the young urchins had passed us by and the danger was over, I looked at my new friends and they were smiling with relief. The unicorn winked at me as the fairy jumped on his back and waved at me. They took off out of the shadow of the rhubarb plant into the sunlight and disappeared. Realizing that I had just experienced something of a lifetime that no one would believe me, including my wife, I decided to keep this little adventure to myself and I went into my shop. The very next day, as I came to work, walking past the garden, nostalgic to relive such an incredible moment, I unlocked the door and walked in. To my surprise, I found this beautiful enchanted harp. I could only guess that it was a gift from the unicorns and the fairies of the world for me doing them such an enormous favor. As I studied the harp, I became aware of the magic that rules the world. Hi, I'm Penny Nilsson, grade 4 teacher at the Distance Learning Center in Kenaston. And today, I'm so excited to be with my friend who wrote this story that I just read to you. And he's going to be sharing some of his adventures with interesting instruments with us. I need you to pull out your listening guide so that you can mark down things as we're learning along together here today. And also, I would like it if you put your grade into the comments and where you're calling in from. It's always so fun to see where we're all at across Saskatchewan. Now, would you like to meet the man who wrote the enchanted harp? And the man who befriended the fairies and the unicorns? I know you do. He lives in a museum right in Saskatoon. And he builds instruments. And today, we have the pleasure of spending some time with him. Please help me welcome my friend, Weldon Gray.
Hi, everybody. My name is Weldon, as he just told you, and I'm a luthier. And a luthier is a person who makes musical instruments. Anyway, what I was wanting to bring to your attention is, do you see the beautiful harp here? Penny, if you could turn that for me, then we could end up talking about it a little bit. Okay, as we turn it, you can see that it's got a unicorn carved at the top and the queen of the fairies. And she's holding oddest of things. She's holding a purple egg and it's cracked a little bit and there's something coming out of the top of it. But let's turn it all the way around. And there's a purple egg hidden right under the back there. And you probably didn't know it, but this is the mystery of where unicorns come from. Now, there's a little book, an ebook on the website. And with your parents' permission and with your teacher's help, you can look it up and you can actually read the whole story of the enchanted harp because it's full of all kinds of little pictures, big pictures, everything. And they're all burnt into the wood with a hot iron. And this is something that the fairies and the unicorns of the world left for me. And I was quite proud of it. And after they did that, I thought, you know something? I'd like to carve something of my own here. as our camera person is going to slowly pan over to, yeah, that's it. That's good. Back up just a tiny bit. Okay, this is another. I built this harp afterwards, and it talks about fairies and unicorns and all kinds of stuff like that. These are two leprechauns. This is Seamus, and that's Finnegan over there. Seamus has a hedgehog for a pet. Finnegan has a turtle, and he likes to stand on the turtle. It makes him a little taller. And there's all kinds of stories here. And there's a book being written about that too, but it's not done yet. But as soon as it's done, I'll let your teachers know, and you'll be able to go on the website and read that book too. As we go through this, you're going to watch a little movie pretty soon, and it tells a lot about what I do for a living. And there's a bunch of instruments that you're going to see, and I built all of those because that's how I make my living. And it's an interesting way to live. But there's one harp that I didn't build, and that's this one right here. And we have a harp club, and it's people all who like to play the ancient Irish harp. Now, like this. Oh, excuse. You know what? I'm going to go back a little bit. This harp right here is what we call the gilded harp. And if we could come a little closer and point it a little closer. That's good. Now, if you could point it down, it'll be just, it's perfect. Okay, you can see that this harp, it has all of its designs. Now, these designs are pretty authentic from the 1400s. Now, that's a long time ago. That's even before I was born. And they're just everywhere. There's a griffin and just beautiful Celtic knots and that sort of thing. There's a serpent here on the front, and that's a very authentic copy of a harp from the 14th century. And I'm going to play a little bit for you before I get to the other harp. I kind of got ahead of myself. Sorry about that. Anyway, this is a song. It's called Mogill Mare. And I think it's a story about a lady who's waiting for her husband or her boyfriend or something like that to come back from sea, and she's hoping that he'll be safe. So I'm going to play a little bit of it, okay? And something unusual about these harps is the strings are wire. Some of them are gold, silver, bronze, brass, and iron. This one is mostly brass because that's what I can afford to make it with. And you play it with your fingernails, and if you're close enough, you can see my fingernails are quite long so that I can play the harp. And I'm going to start right now playing Mogill Mare. I only played it with my right hand so that you could see how the fingernails work on it. That's the only harp that's ever been played that way, and I think it's the only harp that's ever had metal strings. But we kind of like that, so we have a little club and we all play our ancient harps, and it's kind of fun. And as I was saying, there's a harp here that I didn't build, but it's a member of our harp club. Kelly Robin is what we call a luthier's apprentice. And she built this, and she's in the process now of doing all of the artwork. And you'll see that the artwork is mostly Celtic knots and geometric designs. And this is the tuner. And if Penny, if you could hold that real close to the camera and just kind of turn it, that's perfect. Now slowly turn it, very, very slowly. Another turn because that side there. Okay. Now those are what they call Celtic knots. And that's very common in the 1400s. That almost their houses, their instruments, their weapons were all designed with these Celtic knots, and it's all burned in with hot irons, and that's how they did it. And so anyway, this is what Kelly Robin has made, and she's in the process. It's not quite done. Actually takes quite a while to build one of these harps. And so anyway, we have a teacher from Ireland who comes in much like what we're doing now, and she teaches us the harp. And some of us who can afford to pay for the lessons and are not cheap, we pay for the lessons. We learn what we can, and then we pass it on to the other members of the harp club. And that's the way it seems to work real well there. She comes all the way from Dublin, or I can't think of it. It's a little town outside of Dublin. And what I'd like to do now is invite everybody who would like to come and see our museum whenever this plague is over with. It'd be kind of nice. So if you're interested, you would be able to come and look at the instruments and actually pick some up and try them. So what we're going to do now is our camera lady, which is Kelly Robbins, she's doing the camera now, she's going to slowly turn the camera so that you can see the rest of the museum, so you know what's in store for you. Penny, if you just turn that light off, and don't need that right now. Okay, perfect. And I'm going to get out of the way here. Come right on in close. That's one side of the museum, and it goes all the way to the back wall. Now, if we can twist it just a tiny bit, yeah, that's it, like that. And then you can see the other side of the museum. And there's all kinds of instruments. I'm going to name some of the instruments. There's clarsachs, which that is the Irish harp. There's theorbos, there's organistrums, there's ouds, lutes, psalteries, and balalaikas. And these are all names of ancient instruments that most of them don't exist anymore today, but I have kind of fun making stuff that doesn't exist. And right about now, I think you get to watch a movie which shows us playing the instruments, and I'll be playing a lot of the instruments, but some of the people from the harp club will be playing some too. So goodbye for now, but don't go away, because there's going to be a fun little movie to watch. The instruments in my little museum, I built everything. None of them came from plans or kits. I would take like a medieval painting or something like that, measure from the wrist bone to the elbow bone, and you get a pretty good idea by doing math how big the instrument is, and it gives you a close idea. Just don't ask me to balance a checkbook, but I can make just about anything I can see, and I'm not even sure why. I built all of the instruments in here. There aren't any plans that I know of that you can buy to do this, so most of it is done from historical paintings and that sort of thing. Okay, this represents the oldest thing that I recreated. They found ouds in Pharaoh's tombs 2,000 years before Christ. They brought the oud back to Europe, and that's when they put frets on it and turned it into a lute. This is basically the grandfather of the lute, which is the grandfather of the guitar. A lot of them were made from gourds, and that's why they have the bulbous body. Okay, this is the lute. It's a descendant of the oud, which made its way into the European society around the time of the Crusades, and the Crusaders brought it back from the Middle East. This one's made of curly maple. This is curly maple, and then the purfling in between is a strip of ebony, a strip of holly, and then another strip of ebony. Very, very, very thin. The neck is decorated with just a medieval design. Explains how the whole thing is done. Completely symmetrical like this. With clamps like this. And then you just take a machete or something like that. And then you glue them together. And we're getting about 17 of these glued together. You glue them onto here. The first one ever came to Canada, customs stopped it. They thought it was a weapon. I have a theorbo that I made in my shop a couple of years ago, and it's a little weird looking because basically it is a bass lute. The reason it is so long is because they wanted the really low notes, but you can't, when you're limited to gut strings, you can't just make them larger to get a deeper sound. They go dead. So they had to go longer. And so this is actually a short one, but this is a French lute from the 1600s, and it's called a theorbo. This is a vihuela. In Shakespeare's time, if you went to buy a guitar at the music shop or a luthier, I suppose they didn't have music shops. Anyway, it would look something like this. This is a fluted back vihuela. I don't know why they do the fluted back. It's very difficult to make. By the time I was done, I made a lot of kindling. This is a very small instrument, but it has a very good sound. And I'm thinking it's because there's no rebracing required because of the strength of this, the flutes. If this was completely authentic, it would only have 5 courses and it would probably be double string. But I made this one just like a regular guitar, so anybody who plays a guitar can pick it up and play it quite comfortably. I just built them. Who said I could play them? My theory is that it came from China when the Mongols were raiding back and forth between China and Russia. There's a lot of Chinese instrument with 2 strings, and I believe that it came from that. One of the weird things is the first 2 strings are the same. It has 4. These 2 are the same. These 2 are the same. No, I've built more than I can play finally. My ability to build them has outdone my ability to play them. Very badly done. Okay, this is the giant psaltery. It's a relatively new instrument. I think they started bowing it in the 1800s. And this is a smaller bowed psaltery, which should be about the same time. But the psaltery goes all the way back to the Bible, and it looks something like this. It might have a double cutaway like this in the then hold it in their arms like that and pluck it as poetry is being read. But the giant psalter, even though it sounds like it's right out of the Middle Ages, I'm afraid it's only about the early 1800s is when it was actually born. This is the Fitzgerald Kildare harp from the 17th century. It's an Irish harp. It's a member of the Clarsac family. The Clarsac's are Celtic harps that are all strung with wire, opposed to silk or gut strings, which was typical of that period. They're strung with brass wire. That could be gold, silver, bronze, or brass. And sometimes they actually used iron, but they sound like a bell as opposed to the more modern harps that have a little more of a plunky sound. I just fell in love with the Irish harp, so they just keep appearing kind of like rabbits. This is the organistrum. It was invented by monks in the Basque area of France and Spain. There's some stone carvings on a church called Puerta de Gloria. It's on the El Camino Trail that goes from Poland to Madrid. None have survived from antiquity. It's the only thing we have are pictures. So this is built from looking at the pictures of that. And it has 3 strings. It plays chords, and they used it to mostly accompany Gregorian music. This is the hurdy-gurdy, and it is the grandchild of the organistrum. It evolved from the 1100s and all the way up until even the 1800s. They were still using and making hurdy-gurdies in Europe. In fact, there's a renaissance and they're making them now. And this is the Baroni hurdy-gurdy because a famous artist who did a lot of pictographs, his name was Baroni, and he's depicted some what you call a hurdy-gurdy man. They would go from village to village, announce that the hurdy-gurdy man was in town. People would come listen to the music. You could maybe even dance and that sort of thing, but it'd be quite the event. You're realizing that in the Middle Ages, there was no music, there was nothing. If you weren't singing or playing an instrument, there was silence. So when somebody could actually play an instrument and showed up playing it, people would stop what they're doing and take a look. It's a fairly interesting instrument. You turn a crank. The crank rubs against a string, which makes a sound, and you shorten the sounds and change the pitches by pushing the keys. The hurdy-gurdy is just a really neat instrument, and it's something that as I'm making my last instrument, I'm always figuring out what my next project will be, and that was next. Music, most of my life was not a big deal until I heard a medieval and Renaissance group. I went to a concert of the Troubadours, which is a women's group, and it just moved me, and I wanted to get a lute. You can't really buy one, so I figured out how to make it. That was so much fun that I just kept going. I, for some reason, have the ability to create 3D plans in my head, and once in a while I have to put it on paper, and I actually keep a record of it, but most of the furniture, the instruments, and that sort of thing I just built. So there really wasn't any plans. For some reason, I've had the ability to do that. You got to move your chords.
Welcome back. For me, watching that, listening to the music, it just touches my heart, and I hope that it touched your heart as well. Back with Weldon, and we're going to do a little bit of Q&A. I hope you have some questions on your mind, and let us know your questions. I've got a couple to get us started. So Weldon, how long does it take to build an instrument like the harp?
I would have to guess. I never pay attention. I never pay attention to the hours. I'm just having fun doing it, so I don't know. But when I built this, it took approximately 6 months. But that's as close as I can get. But I think we paid attention to a hurdy-gurdy, and I think we built a hurdy-gurdy in 4 weeks for a customer. Wasn't that right? Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, 4 weeks.
Yeah, it was about 4 weeks. So there you go.
Maybe a month or so. Hey, wonderful. And I think that it was mentioned in the video, but where did the plans come from?
There isn't any plans. Usually they're from an ancient painting, or you can now buy plans for some instruments, but it's from ancient paintings and that sort of thing. And what I would do in the ancient painting, in the 12th, 13th, 14th century, there wasn't exactly an overabundance of food, so people weren't that big. And I would take a measurement from this bone to this bone, and then I would get that measurement. That would be my benchmark for figuring out how big the instrument would be. Could you get me a candy out of the candy drawer?
Where's the candy drawer?
Okay.
Is it?
The tin box on the.
Sometimes that throat gets you, right? I know that happens to me too.
On the coffee table.
You moved it.
Oh.
All right.
Oh.
Something else to think about, Weldon, is the music better today than it was back then?
I think it's louder, but I think it's no better. I would say in the 1600s, about Beethoven's time, when they started using all of the half notes and quarter notes, and like when Pythagoras was banging on anvils, they just pretty much had a monochromatic scale, and then it kept getting better. And then when about the time of Beethoven or a little bit before that, they started putting chords together in beautiful operas and symphonies. And since then, it has changed and it's gotten louder because of electricity, but I think it's no better. That's my free opinion.
I tend to agree. It's not any better. It's just louder. Right on. Thank you. What about the harp club? How do people join the harp club, or what does that look like? When do you meet?
It's the easiest club in the world to join. You show up. Probably the only expense you would have is if you wanted to own your own harp. We have lots of harps, and I have harps that I do loaned out to people. But there's no dues, and there's no set time that we show up. Usually it's on Saturday or Sunday, but that always changes. And when there's no plague going on, we have barbecues, and sometimes we just have pizza and movie nights. It's a club. I'm not really a teacher. Our teacher lives in Ireland, and if you can afford to pay her fees, then you can take lessons from her. Otherwise, you have to learn from whatever we happen to glean and can pass on.
Right. We have a question again about how are instruments made that don't exist? Well, you kind of touched on it. You do research from pictures.
From paintings, from ancient paintings, and that's where I get the information. Like the organistrum, I don't know if Ashley has a picture of she took a picture of a painting, an ancient painting, if she could pop that up, about the organistrum, and you have two people playing the organistrum. One person cranks and the other one uses the stops. They do not exist. They're nowhere now. All we have the information is the paintings. So I look at the paintings, and then if you have a knowledge of music, you have a pretty good idea what the range is, and so that's what we use. And like for as far as the back of the instrument, they never do get up and go to the bathroom, so you never do get to see the back of it. So what you do is you just take a guess.
Thanks, Weldon. Next question is the different strings on the instruments. Do they make different sounds?
What?
Different types of string.
Oh yes. The brass. This sounds. It sounds like bells. Where on a lute, if somebody hand me the guitar. On the guitar, it has gut strings or nylon strings, and it sounds totally different. And then they're a real metallic metal sound.
Very nice. Thank you. We have another question. Which of the instruments you built is the hardest to play?
I would say the psaltery, the giant psaltery. That's the one I paid with two bows. Because we all grow up knowing what a piano is. You have a C, you have a C sharp, you have a D, and then D sharp, and so on and so forth. But on the psaltery, the sharps and flats are on one side of the instrument, and the monochromatic notes are on the other side of the instrument. And so when you're playing a C and you want to go to a C sharp, you don't just go up and you have to go to the other side of the instrument. And that is very difficult. I was playing Dowland's Flow My Tears, and it took me almost a year to learn it. But then I'm not an exceptional musician. I just don't give up. I keep trying. That's the only thing I got going for me.
Fabulous. Oh, we've got another question. Where is the museum?
In Saskatoon. Yeah. Oh, in my basement, where I live.
Yeah. So it's in a private residency. How long does it take you to build each instrument? Well, we did talk about that. So anywhere from 4 weeks.
From a month to 6 months. This one took I easily spent a year on this one, but then I'm carving leprechauns, hedgehogs, turtles, and this 4-pillar. See, this a wisteria vine has taken over this pillar and it's choking it. Yeah, in the story, which I haven't finished the book yet, so we won't be able to read the book for a while. But it took me about 3 weeks to make wood look like wood.
No easy task for sure. It looks like the story harps are some of your favorite.
Yes, they're fun. Because the whole time I'm carving them, I can give them a name, and they have this guy. Well, let's go back to it. This guy is Seamus, and the little guy over there is Finnegan. Seamus and Finnegan, and this guy is Seamus, and then the other guy, he's Finnegan. This guy is kind of a selfish, ornery little guy, and Finnegan is just a fun-loving guy who will do anything that Seamus tells him to. And they're in trouble because they planted a seed in a flower pot, which grew up and is now choking the harp. That the fairy had planted a magic seed in this flower pot, and the harp is growing, and it was going to be a magic, beautiful harp. But they kind of ruined it with a seed to a wisteria vine, and so their punishment now is they have to hold the harp every time she plays it in in the meadow for all of the creatures of the forest, and that's their punishment. Now, Seamus is a little upset, but Finnegan, he doesn't realize it's their punishment. He's just having fun. But you can read about that after I finish the book.
Thanks for sharing about that. We had a question, where is the Harp Club and how can someone join that's not in Saskatoon?
It depends if you could. I suppose we could set up a virtual club, but you'd have to talk to me. Are you? It depends whether you're close enough to drive in. Like if you drove in once or twice a month, you could be a part of it. And then when we have a barbecue, you can drag your parents along, if you live several days, like a day's drive away, then that would be tough. But we could still do something via Skype or something like that.
Yeah, absolutely. There's another question. Is there an instrument that you have not made yet that you want to?
Yes, lots of them, but I don't know if I'll live long enough to make them all.
Fabulous. Looks like our time is getting to the end. Is there any final questions for Weldon that you're curious about? And have you been able to answer all the questions on that listening guide as well? Looks like we're all done. Any final words from you, Weldon? Maybe there's an aspiring woodworker out there that might want to build instruments.
Well, it's possible. If so, I would give you whatever help or advice I could give you.
Fabulous. Thanks so much.
You're welcome.
Thanks to everybody for joining us. Bye.